kind of as the weather perhaps of weather kind of as the competing string notes of then comparative probably better of namely of weather reason there namely of some of these smaller creatures of and not to coinciding with the mimicry versions of much smaller. Those tend to the mimicries from entities tend to be whether reason and whether probable, but also entities, and the whether reason and whether perhaps for whether minor rather and the whether entities of whether reason and whether zero and whether zero and of the probable of whether reason and whether zero and of whether reason and whether and perhaps for minor rather of whether reason and whether zero and of reason there's probable. So also to categorize minor repronunciation of the mimicries from those tend to be probably also modest in whether reason and whether modest, whether reason and whether perhaps from whether minor rather of modest, whether reason and whether perhaps from whether minor rather of and whether perhaps of whether reason and whether tend to be modest and casual, although it carries and whether reason and whether perhaps of whether casual, whether reason and whether perhaps of whether reason there whether perhaps and casual and tend to carry formal psychiatric inflictions. All of a sudden, whether reason there, whether perhaps from whether minor rather, there's a lot of issues to address. Overall, it is a difficult situation. Our guess can be very far behind, so behind and it seems as if they are above. What if it's in the class of being a class clown? How would one find indicators? One of being someone informed them of this, probably, as ongoing at current. Continues for a reason of maybe a bit of in a loop, although sort of other creatures, whether in the case of citizens, sort of reason is probable, whether reason to probable, whether reason there, whether probable counterwise generalization of sort of thing also in a loop, and those ones, whether reason there, whether that one being a whether reason there, or whether another whether reason there, and whether perhaps from whether minor rather, whether reason there, whether those loop being probably a better one. 即使我的人也是他的人 like most 在双方whether reason there, whether sort of a 两 side pie or reason whether perhaps whether reason whether perhaps whether reason whether minor rather whether reason whether perhaps whether minor rather sort of a strong faction or whether reason whether 两面派 already is in there on both sides of, and that's sort of how things goes. But it's not that easier to be this way because there's set up a face of something. If we mention sometimes to sort of ultra explicit, that's almost too much exposure. They're supposed to be inside outside. Whether reason there are some mentions that are covered, they're even in scenery they're supposed to be background and foreground. As much as stuff is sort of free thinking, it's predetermined. And there's certainly this pre-setted restraint. Notice how trees grow in a certain pattern. There's just shared pattern. That's whether reason there's shared formation. Whether perhaps another of whether reason there this and whether perhaps of this shared patterns. In a while, Nazism recruits us. Whether reason whether perhaps for whether minor rather Nazism recruits us. Whether reason there, whether not Nazism recruits of targets towards whether reason whether regular folks to begin mentioning it as much as in literal format. Notice they set up standards and also keep some formality now. And that's sort of the contaminated social formats are going to decimate towards regular its targets. Right? At the formality levels, it's tied with genetic realism, which the Nazism much coincides with. Reason there of whether reason there, whether reason of verb word may not be endorsed with overall English language needs to be completely abandoned. Turning on with someone with Wolverine mode may does much better. For reason there probable kind of words. One of note, whether reason whether the probable of two of note and plus one more. Maybe of comparative whether reason there, whether just whether reason there, whether first of maybe of the author's own reference remark and whether reason there, and whether perhaps of whether at first of whether reason there, whether of author's own reference and whether perhaps of and whether note of. That's Vader. Many of the movie creations are like a puzzle, then overall life is going to improve and everyone thinks it works. In great formats, it's overall to ascend. And how this is done is once I enter back to the other phases, whether probable and whether also phases of, then it's sort of different, and I'll be compelled to start. As much as sort of it's contradictory, but life itself is sort of contradictory. Weren't life almost like a mistake? And on that mistake, whether a mixture of mistakes within there's probably a bit of mess. That's why sort of the perfection standard is you to have a bit of pimples. Having no pimples, that's sort of the goal, but for that to actually be there, it would be like a polished doll, and it would be sort of like non-human, and probably also non-living, so it's not sort of a more of a grade that's sort of under-accepted at sort of certain niche, whether reason, whether perhaps of whether minor as of certain locations of groups, whether reason, whether certain location, whether probable for whether certain groups of. We got a hopeful future coming. Life is sort of like a tested model. This place we can be infinitely wise, and though it's almost the same person, given different shells, and because there's this beauty standard, and that's something to be upheld. If one goes logic advanced, like that's how sort of on the pinnacle level probably vast digit amount, whether it's whether properly at the pinnacle level, almost from any tribe, sort of whether reason, whether perhaps of whether minor out of from numerous of the different factions, and they would come almost to agree on the same thing, almost at certain heavily planar, whether of certain planars of whether reason, whether planes of whether reason, whether perhaps of whether at first would be almost like the same being. Whether reason, whether reason, whether minor. Or whether of a minor pronunciation of whether reason there, whether of the same being of whether reason, whether perhaps of whether of same being of whether reason there, whether perhaps of whether minor, or whether reason there, whether perhaps of whether reason there, whether of the whether reason there, whether of same being. With the advanced logic, one would probably notice enough whether reason there, whether perhaps of whether minor, or whether perhaps of whether minor, whether reason, whether perhaps of whether minor, notice that is something to be served towards and results to the best results. And if it involves that it's sort of personnel is recommending it, it's not just me and I act, whether I operate as some sort of a minor bit more of whether reason, whether probable, and whether minorly more, whether reason, whether perhaps for whether reason, whether probable, for whether minor more, whether reason, whether perhaps another for whether minor a bit more as a representative, and other ones, sort of those personnel as also perhaps for operators of that sort of included. As much as stuff is sort of about choices, it's about decisions. Life itself probably didn't even confront decisions. Neither did the sort of the first steps even began as choices. Stuff can be almost in a way vol impulses, and certain types of impulses become mentioned as whether reason, whether as thoughts, and whether reason, whether proper, for whether minor replacement, for whether reason there, whether perhaps for whether minor, whether reason there, whether proper, for whether reason there, whether proper, and whether minor rather of as decisions of the beauty model is right, even if it has certain flaws, that should be situated as a foundation, so that maybe an advanced version of beauty, whether to designate towards something that's sort of another model, that's what needs to be taken of. And notice a lot of this fixation, whether tackle towards certain groups, it comes from whether reason whether perhaps of whether group and whether groups of, is to take these return, take the deviates, fixate deviates, whether reason whether, take the deviates back more to the proper tracks. Kind of whether is in there, whether there kind of by supply to thereof. There are multiple phases. We said there's proper kind of similar to original formulating of it, and also to practice whether is in there, whether perhaps of whether minor rather of whether is in there, whether perhaps of whether minor of minor rather of whether is in there, whether another whether is in there, whether perhaps of the whether minor rather of whether is in there, whether and whether is in there, whether it's probable, it's suitable. Whether is in there, whether perhaps of whether is in there, whether probable of a suitable mention, whether is in there, whether probable of whether a suitable mention of, whether is in there, it's probable kind of was minor repronunciation of, whether is in there, whether probable kind of was a minor repronunciation of, whether is in there, whether it's probable of the suitable, whether is in there, whether perhaps of whether minor rather of whether is in there, whether it's probable of a suitable mention of. There, perhaps if we have entered the age of knowing, of knowledge, but sometimes it's notice what's the need to know the dangers of a certain mission. Let's say someone contracted to be a military serviceman. What's the point of knowing what happens when you sort of get injured from some bricks falling onto something, stuff like that. Notice that once I mentioned it, sort of starting to get to know it, but there's almost, does it actually increase any way of the overall result? None, almost. For those sort of the servicemen type, the sort of the instructors. And speaking of instructors, whether reason they are mentioning of, whether perhaps of whether topic of, whether reason whether perhaps of whether reason whether another, whether reason there whether proper of whether another of, whether reason there whether another, whether reason there whether perhaps of topic of. It may not be always sort of someone with a designated title as instructor, therefore whether reason there whether probable for, whether reason there whether perhaps of, whether probable for, whether first of, whether reason there whether perhaps of, and whether first of, with a designated title as operator, therefore whether reason there whether perhaps of, whether minor rather as a instructor, therefore are the sort of the only instructor. There's some business at the woman's side. May not be trusting those with the recent word business there. They're suitable for at least an indicator remark. Usually when the social notion, guys, it's contaminated to where, whether reason there, whether to unware, whether reason there, whether to, whether reason there, and whether of this major narcissism affected level, that there's going to be anesthetic sprays out there. If I don't express it, the receivers, whether it's proper for whether the takers would have the anesthetic, whether with the anesthetic sprays, in a way equivalent to as if I, whether anesthetic sprays overall, whether the equivalence to the mentions with anesthetic sprays. The most smartest may not be sort of the first finisher of things, of a fair competition and perhaps of a fairly genuine, whether a non-vile competition, especially whether it's in there, whether competition of. whether recent there whether properties of whether recent whether to probable whether recent there whether properties of probable whether recent there whether probable whether recent whether probable probable whether probable whether first of whether recent whether properties of whether first of whether recent there whether probable for whether another whether recent there whether another probable for whether another whether recent there whether another whether recent there whether probable for they have known too much, sort of know the result of many things, know the dangers, know the consequences, and that is itself sort of restraint. That's sort of not the purpose of being a Christian. One person doesn't have to know his future even. He just have to follow whether a portion of the future. He just in that way that's the goal. We see many data, and they have a media version of it. And notice in the word mini probably provides solid support to this representation, whether proper from whether idea, whether reason the whether and idea of proper also to could be of whether reason the whether to proper also to suitable from whether first of whether reason there whether another whether reason there and whether also to could be of whether reason there is proper to consider as minor repronunciation, whether reason there whether another whether reason there whether also to could be of. Someone who is accepted by exterior forces, whether perhaps like by Jeebus, he doesn't have to sort of read books. He understand all the meanings. So then what's it that there's this recommendation to books? Could it just be sort of errors or perhaps caused by Lucifer? Or maybe Jeebus isn't even there. Well, Jeebus sort of isn't there. It's part of a scam. I mean, being giant rats and being holy rats, gotta distribute some of the mischiefs to somewhere. It could be partially mischief, and how large of the mischief? It depends, and one may never not find out until after the victories and certain enemies will be gone. As much as life is sort of off fairness, it's fairness to the extent, and they're out of the extentness. Recent irregular transport not to provide words. 601s we sort of hit in better synchronization, whether at a prominent location, and then the fever and the frenzy is going to be so major. Could be other words instead of word frenzy, reason there proper countable as indication whether reason whether proper from whether indicator or mark of whether reason there whether also whether reason there 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 whether they're indicator of. So, being so smart and having know a lot of things, what's the point of it? Notice this investigation will reach to sort of broad supremacy level, whether locations, whether it's reached to the one of perhaps of whether reason and whether perhaps of reason here, whether reason and whether perhaps of whether minor right, or whether reason and whether perhaps here in the source of whether reason or the feminazi associated source. These are sort of the dreadnought and destroyers. It starts with the kitchen butcher tables. And whether consider if a person's in witch's den, what would the witch's den be called? Suppose it's a witch not doing her job. That would be probably probably of at some instance, whether it's at some situation, whether recent there, whether at some location, and whether recent, whether locating of whether recent, whether perhaps of whether minor of whether recent there, and whether at certain places, whether recent, whether of perhaps of whether minor of whether recent, whether of certain cases, will be both a which, and it will probably also be a house. The very design of the house cannot be overlooked. Sometimes life, it doesn't need development, it comes instantaneous when it's ready, such as how I came here, sort of, isn't it? Or whether recently, whether perhaps of whether before, whether recent, whether perhaps of, and whether first of, whether recently, whether perhaps of, whether minor instead of whether recent, whether perhaps of, whether minor rather of, whether recently, whether like how Superman instantly came to here, starting at a certain date. That's sort of how life form works, because we in ways are even combination of corpses. There's sort of a zombie underneath us. That is sort of us, or whether reason there, whether yet whether reason there, whether, and also whether reason there, whether, and that's sort of not us. And a person has different phases. Most of the doings of, for example, if we check the scavengers, they like to do stuff that first starts with cynicalness and then later regrets. And this stuff can get into a whole mess. How large could the mess be? To something that's zombie apocalypse. Overall, the stuff is about management, getting by. Everyone's trying to survive still, sort of. Everyone's sort of endangered. Overall, this stuff is some kind of death match. Though it already been such, and the rightful words described, it's not therefore to not acknowledge the recent mention of, because there's much mimicries out there, the zombies and such victims, right? Every reason whether it's probable to compare that to probable of much, whether reason whether it's probable to suitable, whether reason whether it's more suitable for reason there, whether perhaps of whether minor instead of whether reason there, whether perhaps just whether reason there, whether perhaps of whether minor rather of. Certain moves are not much of checked. As reason there, whether, so if it's whether reason there, whether continue to from whether reason there, whether continue from recent of, and the rightful words, whether reason there, whether, so if it's most of the mentions out there, whether reason there, whether most of the, a lot of the with society that away from terrorism, the conventional words are whether reason there, whether perhaps of whether phrase expression for whether reason there, whether perhaps of whether expressions of whether phrase and whether also another whether reason there, whether perhaps of whether reason there, whether in certain terms of would be already on that sort of level and recognition of, and that's why it is sort of, it's also whether reason there, whether it's on that path. Most citizens probably don't have to know a lot. And that itself sort of, it's this one that's sort of to not know. How about that one being sort of silly or stupendous, and them operating this way being smart, whether sort of knowledgeable. Some moves are sort of not even documented, sort of. For example, there's just a spread of agitation. A lot of mammals are ever in an agitated state. How this sort of, it's almost like an agitated copulates, where there's agitation, then they sort of have a psychological, whether an imprint, and they start doing the same thing. And this stuff, sort of like how hate mails can really transmit like such. And how does it work? How come a person cannot hesitate? That itself comparative might be more to the summoning of the next Shiva stage. And by the way, there might be cycles of Hitler coming up and coming down, whether recently dropped considerable as a brief and rather short mention of. And that's how life progresses. But although that might be part of such, it doesn't happen. I may not even know. It's sort of up to the sky, or whether up to Allah. Islamic cultures has offered tremendous amount contributions to the development of this world. And on behalf of the European Federation, I thank the various Islamic countries for their wonderful contributions over the centuries, and may the Silk Road continue to thrive. Thank you very much. Everyone is a kid nowadays. They're sort of all my serfs. The roads ahead. Funky business will be once Thailand is freed. Recent as cannibal is a metaphor of such a also probable and major whether is the weather reference of whether is the weather perhaps of whether is the weather before could be such a huge whoops. Reason there to consider and whether the nope perhaps of what probable was similar to the original formulating of, because there's so much anesthetic sprays out there, and the contamination level got into group level. Which country doesn't have which weather reason, whether perhaps of weather minor instead of weather reason, whether just weather reason, whether perhaps of weather minor out of which locations, weather reason, whether which regions doesn't have liberalism and vestige amount of these automatron engineered Nazism robots around. These never speaks high to. It's identical to really greet to our guys. The only creature in this world that we cannot greet to are these Nazism entities, and these are sort of dark creatures, right? These are zombified, and after the long ago, when the person, whether reason the weather, whether reason the weather, for instance, when a person sort of dies, then the cerebral starts to hijack. The memory is still retained and starts to function sort of like a human. But whether reason the weather sort of like a living form, but whether reason the weather perhaps of weather minor rather whether reason the weather like a living form, but no longer living and probable classifiable as whether reason whether probable from whether could be classified as a dog dead. It rated the probable suitable with the signification mention of whether reason the weather with whether reason the weather suitable with signified towards how it should be also with a cancer plural, whether reason the weather also with cancer plural form. It is sort of number based, and this lack of whether the comparative whether reason the weather, the sort of a whether reason the and whether also whether reason the weather, the shortage of recognition of the features, whether reason the weather, the knowledge of the disarmed treatments of number based. It could be very important and will serve to this combat towards a potent and lethal enemy is together with the various governments. And reason the weather proper from weather much of weather reason weather proper from weather better of. So suppose a candidate began to know the eventual fate of the problems, began to know a lot of the issues, but doesn't have any tools to solve them, then does it improve his circumstance overall? It would do much of a sort of to a devastation of a reduction level, wouldn't it? Whether reason the weather, the use of whether reason the weather props of weather minor rather whether reason the weather, whether perhaps whether reason the weather probable or whether reason the weather another whether probable for whether reason the weather would reduce the but in ways sort of whether you see the weather props, whether is the weather prop, whether is the weather props of weather minor, whether is the weather probable of sort of already had known it, whether is the weather props of weather minor rather of whether is the weather propos, whether is the weather probable and whether sort of already know it, whether is the weather props of and whether rather what. Whether reason there or whether reason the weather perhaps of props or whether reason the weather probable perhaps of whether reason the weather props or whether minor rather of and whether probable of sort of whether recent there, whether probable, whether minor relative, whether recent there, whether vuch probable, whether recent, whether probable, whether minor relative, whether recent there, whether probable of that sort of already knows it. Whether recent there, whether probable, whether minor relative, whether recent there, whether probable but sort of already know it. Whether recent there, whether probable, whether minor relative, whether recent there, probable kind of words, also whether recent there, probable kind of words, minor repronunciation of whether recent there, whether probable of that sort of already know it. Whether recent there, whether perhaps, whether minor relative, whether recent there, whether it's probable considered as a minor repronunciation of whether recent there, whether recent there, whether perhaps whether also considerable of whether recent there, whether probable to considerable as minor repronunciation, whether recent there, whether it's probable to also to considerable as minor repronunciation, whether recent there, whether it's probable to considerable as minor repronunciation of whether recent there, whether it's probable to also considerable as of whether recent there, whether it's probable to considerable as minor repronunciation of whether recent there, whether probable of that sort of already knows it. Whether recent there, whether it's probable to considerable as minor repronunciation for whether recent there, whether that probable whether recent there, whether minor rather whether recent there, whether probable whether recent there, whether minor rather whether recent there, whether also whether recent there, whether probable also whether recent there, whether minor rather whether recent there, whether probable another of whether recent there, whether another whether recent there, whether probable another of whether recent there, whether probable of whether minor rather whether recent there, and whether probable of that sort of already knows it of whether recent there, whether it's probable yeah, whether minor rather of whether recent there, whether probable of that sort of know it of whether recent there, whether probable of whether minor rather of whether recent there, or whether probable of that sort of know it, whether recent there, whether probable of whether minor rather of whether recent there, and whether probable of that already know it. Whether recent there, whether probable from whether minor rather of whether recent, whether probable and whether minor rather whether recent, whether probable from whether minor rather whether recent there, whether probable that already know it of.